This is the Business Files. Behind every business decision lies an investigation worth reopening.
So, picture this. It's January 19th, 2012.
Oh.
And one of the most, globally dominant, culturally ubiquitous companies on the planet officially files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Which was just a massive shock to the system for a lot of people.
Totally. Because usually when we talk about massive corporate failures of this magnitude, the standard assumption is that we're looking at a company that just lost touch with reality.
Right, like some lazy incumbent that just stopped innovating and got completely blindsided by a startup.
Exactly. But that is not what happened here. Kodak didn't get blindsided by the digital revolution. They actually, they helped create it.
They absolutely did.
And that brings us to today's deep dive. Welcome in, everyone. Today, we are looking at a stack of sources you, our listener, provided to us. It's this meticulously detailed business file tracing the chronology of a giant company's decline.
It is a fascinating read.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack this. We want to detail the specific failure of Kodak's incredibly successful film-based business model. And from that, we're going to extract the harsh, necessary lessons about business transformation that, frankly, every single industry needs to hear.
Yeah, because the standard narrative out there in the, cultural ether is just remarkably simplistic.
Oh, for sure. The dinosaur myth.
Exactly. The popular myth suggests Kodak was just a dinosaur, digital cameras came along, and they stubbornly refused to acknowledge them until they died.
Just completely ignored them.
Right. But the reality, detailed in the materials you sent us, is infinitely more complex. From a business strategy perspective, it's actually a tragedy of completely rational, financially sound decisions that just led to total ruin.
It's wild to think about, but to really understand the fall, I think we have to examine the specific nature of the empire George Eastman built.
Definitely. We have to look at what they were trying to protect.
Right. So Eastman pioneered accessible photography for ordinary people, because before him, photography was this highly technical, messy, chemical process. It was pretty much reserved for professionals.
Yeah, you had to be a chemist, basically, to take a photo.
Exactly. But then he introduces a camera that comes preloaded with film, and you just press a button. But, and this is key, the true genius wasn't the physical camera hardware itself.
Not at all. It was the recurring revenue model.
Yes. Okay, so let's unpack this for a second. Think about buying a modern computer printer today, right?
Oh, the classic razor and blades model.
Right. The manufacturer essentially gives the physical printer away at cost, or maybe even takes a loss on it.
Because they know they're going to get you on the ink.
Exactly. They make their money back tenfold when you're forced to buy their specific, incredibly overpriced ink cartridges for the rest of that printer's life.
And Kodak basically perfected that exact dynamic a century before the modern tech industry even existed.
It's crazy.
They built a highly lucrative empire almost entirely on recurring film sales. The camera was merely the delivery mechanism.
Just a way to get the film into your hand.
Exactly, to get consumers hooked on buying film, and then, this is the best part, paying a second time to have that same film chemically developed.
A self-sustaining loop of cash flow.
A massive, constant cash flow. And what's fascinating here is it wasn't just some clever sales tactic. It was protected by this immense technical moat.
Right, because manufacturing film isn't easy.
No, it requires highly specialized chemical engineering, massive fabrication plants, global supply chains. A startup couldn't just, write some code in a garage and disrupt film manufacturing.
No way.
Because of that moat, Kodak enjoyed profit margins that routinely hovered around 80% on their film and chemicals. 80%.
That is just absurd. I mean, when you have an engine generating 80% margins, it completely transcends the balance sheet. It dictates your entire company culture.
Every single decision goes through that filter.
Right. Every single person in the building, from the research scientists to the marketing executives, they are financially incentivized to maximize that specific analog engine.
Yeah.
So the central dilemma here is, what happens when the exact source of your monumental success becomes the biggest obstacle to your future?
And the scary part is you don't even realize it's an obstacle.
Yeah.
Because it just looks like continuous, overwhelming success.
Exactly. The sheer momentum of that profitability makes a corporation virtually blind to disruptive threats, even when those threats are gestating right inside their own walls.
Which is exactly what happened.
Wow.
We see that internal gestation perfectly in 1975.
Yes. Deep inside Kodak's own research and development labs.
Right. An engineer named Steven Sasson actually built the world's first digital camera.
Right there at Kodak.
Right there. The company destined to be brought to its knees by digital photography was the very one that invented the technology.
It's honestly mind-blowing. Now, the device Assassin built was, I mean, it was rough. It was roughly the size of a toaster.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly pocket size.
No, and it captured images at a resolution of barely 0.01 megapixels. Plus, it took like 23 seconds just to record a single black and white image onto a digital cassette tape.
So very crude.
Super crude. But it fundamentally proved a reality that had to send shivers down the spine of any executive who was actually paying attention. Photography could exist entirely without film.
It completely severed the dependency on their core product.
Right. The printer no longer needed the ink.
Exactly.
But I have to push back on the corporate behavior here. Here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Go for it.
If one of their own engineers walks into the boardroom in 1975 and demonstrates a camera that doesn't need film, I struggle to accept why a room full of brilliant executives wouldn't immediately pivot.
It seems obvious in hindsight, right?
Yeah. Like, even if the technology is 20 years away from consumer viability, they had the first mover advantage to just own the next century. Why not go all in?
Well, if you apply a rational analysis to the corporate psychology of the time, it reveals why a pivot was virtually impossible for them.
Okay, tell me more.
Kodak had a strict fiduciary responsibility to a massive, incredibly profitable global film business. You're sitting on an ecosystem generating billions of dollars in pure profit.
Right. The 80% margins.
Exactly. And Steven Sassen's prototype is unproven, produces terrible images, and most importantly, it generates zero revenue.
Yeah, Wall Street wouldn't like that.
Shutting down multi-billion-dollar chemical factories to focus on an experimental toaster gadget, that would have been considered literal corporate malpractice by investors.
Wow, so they were basically trapped by their own success.
Completely. They viewed digital as a supplementary research project, just something to monitor and perhaps slowly integrate over decades, ensuring it never actually threatened the core film ecosystem.
But external markets don't respect internal corporate timelines.
No, they certainly do not.
And the sources point out this pivotal moment in 1981. Sony introduces the Mavica, which was an early electronic video camera.
Right, it wasn't fully digital yet, but it captured images on floppy disks instead of film.
Exactly. And Kodak's executive team panicked just enough to commission a massive internal market intelligence study to determine the actual threat level of screen-based photography.
And the results of that 1981 study are fascinating.
What did they find?
Kodak's own researchers concluded that digital photography would absolutely, unequivocally replace film.
Wow, so they knew.
They saw the future perfectly clearly. However, the study also concluded that the transition would take roughly 10 years before digital quality could actually rival film quality at a consumer price point.
10 years? I mean, 10 years sounds like a luxury. It sounds like a massive runway to transition your entire company.
It really does.
But the fatal misinterpretation was how they chose to use that decade. Instead of looking at that 10-year window and saying, hey, we have a decade to build the dominant digital photography company, leadership looked at the report and said something entirely different.
Right. They said, we have a 10-year window to maximize our film profits before we have to actually worry about this.
Yes. They used the runway to build a taller wall around their legacy business instead of, building a new airplane.
And we see the consequences of that defensive posture in how agile competitors began outmaneuvering them throughout the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, let's talk about Fuji.
While Kodak was desperately trying to pace the transition to protect their margins, Fujifilm was aggressively expanding. Fuji entered the United States market and began significantly dropping prices.
And Kodak basically just ignored them.
Pretty much. They assumed American consumers would remain loyal to the iconic yellow Kodak box just out of sheer brand affinity.
Big mistake. Because Fuji recognized the impending digital doom much earlier and honestly much more practically.
Well, they had to. Because they were constantly fighting an uphill battle against Kodak's market dominance, they were forced to be scrappier.
Right. And your sources show how Fuji started aggressively diversifying their chemical expertise into completely different industries.
Which is brilliant.
It is. They realized that the complex chemical compounds used to prevent photographs from fading are remarkably similar to the antioxidants used in anti-aging skincare.
Wait, really?
Yeah, which led them to launch a highly successful cosmetics line.
That is wild.
And they leveraged their film coating technologies to manufacture LCD screens for the new flat panel television market.
So Fuji recognized their core competency wasn't just selling film.
Exactly.
It was chemical engineering and managing complex manufacturing processes. Meanwhile, Kodak stubbornly doubled down on defining themselves strictly as a photography company.
Just completely rigid.
But the materials you shared highlight a critical point here. Kodak did not simply stick their heads in the sand regarding digital technology.
They didn't.
No, they poured billions into digital R&D over the years. They created some of the earliest and most advanced digital sensors on the market. They held thousands of digital patents.
Okay, so they were trying.
They were, but replacing a wildly successful legacy business requires more than just patenting new technology. It requires structural transformation.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it functions almost exactly like an autoimmune response in the human body.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The corporate body essentially attacks the new organ, even though that new transplanted organ is the only thing that will keep the body alive in the long run.
Yes. Because the sales teams, the marketing divisions, the regional executives, their entire framework of success is optimized for selling film.
The supply chains and global distribution networks are completely built for physical chemical products.
And the metrics for quarterly earnings are based on those massive 80% film margins. So when you try to introduce a digital product that destroys that ecosystem...
The company's internal antibodies just neutralize the threat.
Exactly. And we see that autoimmune response perfectly illustrated in the consumer digital camera strategy in the early 2000s.
Oh man, the easy share cameras.
Right. The prevailing myth is that Kodak never made digital cameras. But in reality, under CEO George Fisher, Kodak launched the Easy Share line, and for a brief period around, 2001, 2005, Kodak actually held the #1 market share for digital cameras in the United States.
Wait, really? #1?
#1.
Hold on. If they were selling the most digital cameras in the country just 7 years before they went bankrupt, the narrative that they missed the boat is completely false. They were winning the digital transition at that specific moment.
They were.
So how do you go from dominating early digital camera sales to Chapter 11 bankruptcy in less than a decade?
The collapse happened because of the margin disparity.
The margins again.
Yes. They were winning the hardware battle, but hardware is a notoriously difficult, low-margin business. Consumer electronics become commoditized incredibly quickly.
Right, everyone can make a camera eventually.
Exactly. Kodak was selling these digital cameras for a tiny fraction of the profit they used to make on film. Sometimes they were even selling the digital cameras at a loss, hoping they could somehow make up the difference on the back end.
Oh, I see. They were trying to sustain a massive, bloated legacy corporate infrastructure built on 80% margins, using a new product that generated maybe, 5% margins?
Exactly. You simply can't pay for the massive chemical factories and tens of thousands of employees using the pennies you make selling commoditized digital sensors.
Which explains why their internal strategy for digital cameras was so flawed. They weren't viewing the digital camera as a standalone revolution, were they?
No, they were viewing it as a new funnel to drive physical printing.
That is tragic.
They honestly believed people would take digital photos and then go to Kodak kiosks in drugstores to print them out on Kodak paper using Kodak chemicals.
Just forcing the new technology to behave exactly like the old technology.
Play.
And that fundamental misunderstanding of the digital network effect brings us to a massively missed opportunity your sources highlighted in 2001.
Oh, the Ophoto acquisition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Long before Facebook or Instagram existed, Kodak purchased a photo-sharing website called a photo. They essentially own the precursor to modern social media photo sharing.
Which is incredible foresight on paper.
On paper, yeah. If they had leaned into the digital sharing aspect, prioritizing user growth and network effects, they could have completely dominated the social photography space.
But they did the exact opposite.
Okay.
Because their entire business model relied on the physical print, they used Ophoto not as a social network, but as a rudimentary tool to try and force users to print their digital photographs.
They took a revolutionary digital platform that allowed photos to be shared instantly across the globe for free and tried to force it backward into an analog revenue model.
It's painful to look back on.
It really is.
Yeah.
But bring this down to a human level for a moment so we can really understand why this happens.
Okay.
Imagine you are a mid-level manager at Kodak during this transition in the late 90s or early 2000s, right?
Sure.
Your entire compensation package Your yearly performance bonus, your ability to literally pay your mortgage, is inextricably tied to how much physical film or photographic paper your specific division sells.
Right, that's how you feed your family.
Exactly. So when upper management suddenly mandates a pivot to prioritize a new digital platform like GoPhoto, you face a direct conflict of interest. Are you genuinely going to divert your best resources and marketing budget away from the film sales that guarantee your livelihood, just to support an unproven digital product that actively cannibalizes your own numbers?
Absolutely not. Legacy companies structure those incentives to reward the optimization of the current cash cow.
Right.
So the managers who were actively blocking digital integration, they weren't malicious. They were acting entirely rationally based on the compensation environment they were actually in.
The internal incentive structures were perfectly designed to protect the past and reject the future.
Exactly. Heavily funding research and development is practically useless if your operational structure and employee incentives refuse to let the innovation out the front door.
Wow. So this agonizing, decades-long bleed of trying to ride the momentum of the past while fundamentally misunderstanding the future, it brings us to the final technological shift that Kodak simply couldn't survive.
The smartphone.
The smartphone. When Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, the standalone point-and-shoot digital camera market, which was the very market Kodak was relying on for its meager hardware margins, it evaporated almost overnight.
Because photography was no longer a standalone activity, it became an integrated feature of a connected communication device.
Right, you always had it in your pocket.
The transition from film to digital was a shift in the medium, but the transition from standalone digital cameras to smartphones, that was a shift in the entire paradigm of human communication.
That's a great way to put it.
The photo was no longer a physical artifact to be preserved for the future. It became a temporary unit of language used to communicate in real time.
Wow.
And Kodak's entire corporate identity was built on preserving memories. The new world was about broadcasting the present.
And so we arrive back at January 19th, 2012. Kodak officially files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. After dominating an industry they basically helped build for over a century, the giant finally fell.
It's a sobering story.
It is. And the business verdict from this deep dive serves as a stark warning label for every successful company operating today. Kodak didn't fail because it lacked innovation.
Not at all. They had Steven Sasson, they had the first digital camera, they had thousands of patents.
Right. They failed because they couldn't sever the umbilical cord to their legacy business model. They couldn't escape the recurring revenue trap.
Because every generation of business leaders eventually faces the exact same challenge, deciding when to disrupt yourself.
Disrupt yourself.
Yes, disruption is inevitable. The only choice a company has is whether they are the disruptor or the disrupted.
Right.
The Kodak case study proves that being the disruptor requires the corporate courage to look at the very product making you billions of dollars today and intentionally dismantle it to build the next iteration.
Because if you wait until the market demands it, your competitors will gladly do it for you, and they will not care about your legacy. It makes you look around at the landscape today and wonder who the modern equivalents are right now. Like, who is currently sitting on a massive, highly optimized business model feeling totally invincible while the technology that will dismantle them is already brewing in a lab somewhere?
We tend to view the tech giants of our era as permanent fixtures.
Oh.
But it is the exact same hubris of success that blinded Kodak executives in the 1980s.
Yes.
When a business model is that profitable, it creates an illusion of permanence.
An illusion of permanence. Let's build on that for a final, lingering thought for you to mull over today.
Yeah.
Look at today's massive tech giants. Their unbelievable wealth relies almost entirely on one very specific business model.
Right.
Capturing our attention through glowing rectangles and selling that attention to advertisers. It is essentially the modern version of Kodak's recurring film sales, a highly optimized, incredibly profitable, self-sustaining loop.
It really is.
But what happens if a new technology comes along that completely bypasses the screen? If augmented reality, neural interfaces, or advanced AI assistants fundamentally change how we interact with the digital world, removing the screen entirely. A screenless interface doesn't really allow for traditional display advertising.
It definitely doesn't.
Will those modern giants have the courage to abandon their incredibly profitable advertising models to survive the shift? Or 30 years from now, we'll be doing another deep dive on this very show, unpacking how the biggest tech companies in the world became the next Kodak.
That is the multi-billion-dollar question.
It sure is. So keep questioning the things that seem permanent. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.